There's a way to use your mind to start attracting money in a way so natural it almost feels like it happens on its own. And once you understand this, you start breaking out of a scarcity mindset and stepping into a mental state that naturally pulls in more money, more opportunities, more abundance into your life. And I only figured this out after realizing it wasn't about working harder. It was about how my mind was programmed. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how these methods actually work in practice and what you need to change in your mind to make this start happening automatically. But before we get into that, just one quick thing. Subscribe to the channel because I put out content on manifestation and financial mindset 3 times a week, always practical, no fluff. And hit the like button because it helps this content reach more people who are stuck and need to see this. All right, let's get into it. So, what have most people been taught about attracting money with their mind? It goes something like this: think positive, visualize what you want, believe hard enough, and the universe delivers. Simple as that. This idea is everywhere: books, videos, courses, Instagram quotes. And it's not new. Positive thinking as a tool for changing your life has been taught for decades. Napoleon Hill talked about it. Wallace Wattles talked about it. And Joseph Murphy, who's the focus of today's video, also built a big part of his work on this same foundation. The core idea is that your mind has power over your reality. That what you think you attract. That if you change your thinking, you change your life. And honestly, that made sense to me for a long time. It seemed logical. It even seemed scientific. Because if your thoughts influence your behavior and your behavior influences your results, then yeah, changing your thoughts should change your results. And that's exactly why so many people start there. You start repeating affirmations in the morning. You try to visualize your bank account full. You try to think like a rich person, even if you're not totally sure what that means. Most of us have been there. I've been there. And at first, you go all in on the routine. You wake up early, repeat your affirmations in the mirror, put on the motivational audio, build the vision board. There's that moment where you look at everything you've set up and think, this time it's going to be different. But then time passes and the results don't show up, and most people start thinking the problem is them, that they didn't believe hard enough, that they thought wrong. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the issue is that what you've been taught is incomplete? Because incomplete in practice is the same as wrong, and that's exactly where the first problem starts. So what's the first problem? It's not that affirmations don't work. It's not that visualization is pointless. These tools work. Murphy spent his entire life proving that. The problem is that most people are using these tools the wrong way. So they keep repeating the process without results and start thinking they're the problem. Here's how this actually works. Murphy is crystal clear on something almost nobody talks about. The subconscious doesn't respond to words. It responds to feeling, to the dominant feeling, the one you're actually carrying, not the one you're trying to convince yourself you feel. Think of it this way. Affirming without feeling is like typing the wrong password into a safe. You can type it 1,000 times. With all the discipline in the world, the safe doesn't open. Not because the safe is broken, but because the password is wrong. So when you're repeating, I'm rich, I'm abundant, money flows to me, but deep down you feel lack, pressure, doubt, your subconscious doesn't register the words. It registers the feeling, and the feeling it registers is scarcity. When I realized this, it genuinely bothered me because everything I was doing was based on an incomplete version of the process. The effort was there, the ritual was there, but the element that actually activates the subconscious was missing. And here's the thing, that's still just the surface level problem. Because when you look deeper, you start to realize it's not just that a piece is missing. There's something going on at a much deeper level, something that was sabotaging everything before you even opened your mouth to say an affirmation. But the problem goes way beyond technique. Because even if you learn to affirm with real feeling, even if you understand how the subconscious works, there's still something running underneath all of it, something that was planted long before you ever heard of manifestation. It's the beliefs you carry about money. Money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are crooks. We're not the kind of family that has money. Money is hard to make and easy to lose. These phrases seem harmless. They seem like realism, just adults being practical. But here's what Murphy explains actually happened. These ideas entered your subconscious with emotion, with the voice of your mom, your dad, the tension at the end of the month, the shame of not having enough. And when an idea comes in with strong emotion, it becomes programming. It becomes internal truth. So you grow up, discover manifestation, start affirming new things. But those new affirmations come in without equivalent emotion. They're new words trying to overwrite an old recording that's had decades of emotional reinforcement. The subconscious doesn't erase what carries the most weight. It holds on to it. So what happens in practice? You consciously want money, but unconsciously you believe money is scarce, hard to get, or simply not meant for you. And the subconscious always wins. When I realized this, I remembered something specific. I used to spend hours studying money, investing, mindset, but every time a real opportunity showed up, I'd freeze. I'd come up with a reason not to move forward. At the time, I thought I was being cautious. Now I know it was the old programming protecting me from something it had decided was dangerous. And you hear that inner voice, the one that shows up when you think about having real money and quietly says, "That's not for me," or "That seems too good," or "I've never been good with money." That voice isn't realism. It's old programming running in the background. And if you think that's bad, hold on. Because the third problem is what really keeps everything stuck. And it's the one almost nobody has the guts to talk about. Alright, so you didn't know you needed the feeling. You didn't know there was old programming running underneath. Those two mistakes make sense. Nobody taught you any differently. But this third one, this one's different. Because this isn't a technique error. It's a behavior you're choosing every day, and it's actively pushing money away from your life while you're trying to attract it. Let me be straight with you. You know that quick thought that pops up when you see someone successful? That guy got lucky. He probably inherited it. Rich people are all the same. Seems harmless, right? It's not. Murphy explains this with a precision that's genuinely uncomfortable. What you wish on others, you're wishing on yourself. This isn't philosophy. It's direct self-suggestion. When you criticize someone else's wealth, your subconscious registers a clear message. Money is something bad, suspicious, something that deserves criticism. And your subconscious, which is always trying to protect you, starts pushing exactly that away from your life. You are literally programming your own scarcity. And envy and criticism are just one side of this, because the same fear that makes you roll your eyes at someone else's success is the same fear that makes you hoard every dollar with anxiety. Two sides of the same coin, and that coin is scarcity. The subconscious doesn't read the action, it reads the emotion behind it. So when you're operating from a fear of not having enough, you're reinforcing exactly the mental state that attracts more scarcity. Murphy documents a case that illustrates this perfectly. A woman who stockpiled coffee and supplies out of fear of rationing. Her consciousness of lack was so intense that she attracted burglars. She lost not just her stockpile, she lost jewelry, silverware. It wasn't bad luck, it was alignment. These behaviors aren't rare, they're normal. We were taught to distrust wealthy people, to hoard out of fear, to resent those who have more, and all of that seems right. It even seems ethical. But it's costing you years of trying to change your life, doing everything you were told to do, and the results stay the same. Now you know why. So before we keep going, I need to show you something that can seriously speed this process up for you. And this is exactly where most people get stuck. Because understanding the mistakes is one thing, but unwiring a program that's had decades of emotional reinforcement that takes more than one video can deliver. When I was at that point, understanding the problem but not knowing how to actually flip the switch, there was a specific resource that helped me see what I was still missing. And that's what I recommend to anyone who's exactly where I was. It's an ebook focused on precisely this, identifying the mental patterns that are blocking your financial growth and working through those blocks in a practical, no-nonsense way. It's not more of the same stuff you've already read. It's a direct guide for people who've tried and haven't seen consistent results. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments. Check it out, see if it makes sense for you. Now back to what we're here for. Because now that you know what's wrong, the question left standing is, what's actually true? What really works? And that's exactly what I'm going to show you now. So what does Murphy actually teach? It's not positive thinking, it's not asking the universe and waiting, and it's not just swapping bad affirmations for good ones. The foundation is different, and once you get it, everything changes. Here's what Murphy says: wealth isn't a result, it's a state. A sustained state of consciousness, and the difference between someone who consistently attracts money and someone who stays stuck isn't effort, isn't luck, isn't background. It's the mental state each person inhabits day to day. And here's the implication most people don't fully process. Someone who lives in that state keeps attracting even after losing everything, because the source isn't the money, it's the internal state that generates it. Lose the money, keep the state, and the money comes back. Murphy brings in a physics analogy that's impossible to ignore. The only difference between lead and gold is the rate at which electrons move around the nucleus. Same structure, different internal frequency. And he says the difference between scarcity and abundance works the same way. The external world doesn't change first. The dominant mental frequency does. When I understood this, it felt like starting over with the right foundation. The problem wasn't lack of effort, it wasn't lack of merit, it was a mental state I was simply never taught how to build. Money is just a symbol. What changes is your internal relationship with abundance. And when the subconscious accepts that state as true, it goes into what Murphy calls compulsion. It starts moving you toward opportunities, decisions, people automatically. No force, no complicated ritual. And now that you understand what's actually real, let me show you how Murphy taught people to build that state in practice. And Murphy defines this with a clarity I haven't seen anywhere else. The whole approach changes. It's not a minor adjustment. It's a completely different foundation. And once you understand the three elements he puts together, it becomes obvious why everything you were trying before had no real shot at working. Real reprogramming happens when three elements come together at the same time: the right idea, the feeling of already having it, and the right mental state to plant that into the subconscious. Without all three working together, the technique doesn't penetrate. You could repeat it for months and nothing would shift. Let me break it down. The right mental state. Murphy calls it the meditative state, a specific moment in the day when the subconscious is naturally open. And most people use that exact moment in the exact opposite way they should. The second element is the feeling of possession, not affirming that you're going to have it, feeling like you already do, feeling the relief, the ease, the normalcy of already being in that state of abundance, because emotion is the language of the subconscious. That's how you write the new program. And the third, Murphy explains it with a simple metaphor. The idea is the father, the feeling is the mother. Together they produce a result. Separately they're sterile. When I shifted from mechanical affirmation to this state, idea plus feeling at the right moment, that was the first time the whole process actually made sense. Not because I believed more, but because I finally stopped using the wrong tool. Now let me show you how this plays out in practice with the specific techniques Murphy left behind. Murphy didn't just leave theory, he left specific techniques. And what sets these apart from what you've probably already tried is that they were designed to bypass the resistance of the conscious mind and speak directly to the subconscious. The first is the final image technique. Before you were visualizing the process, the effort, the path, how hard it was going to be. Murphy says the opposite. Visualize only the result, the final image of possession, not how you'll get there, just the moment you've already arrived, with real sensory detail, what you see, what you feel. The subconscious can't tell the difference between imagination and reality when the emotion is real. When the emotion is real, that's what activates it. The second is the meditative state. Murphy identifies two specific moments in the day when the subconscious is naturally open. The minutes just before sleep and right after waking up. In that state, mental effort is at its lowest. The resistance of the critical conscious mind drops, and that's exactly when you plant the idea with feeling. No tension, no force, just feel it. Most people hit that moment completely drained and let their mind drift into worry. It's the most powerful moment of the day, being used in reverse. The third is an affirmation formula the subconscious actually accepts. Saying I'm a millionaire when you're in the red, your conscious mind rejects it immediately, and the subconscious registers the rejection, not the affirmation. Murphy suggests progress-based phrases, ones the conscious mind can actually accept as plausible. For example, money flows freely in my life and there's always more than enough. That phrase doesn't trigger rejection, it gets through. And the fourth is the mirror technique. Simple, daily, no drama. Look at yourself and repeat abstract qualities. Wealth, health, success, not a number, not a specific goal. The conscious mind criticizes what it can measure. If you say I'm going to have $1 million, it fires back with, but you don't even have 300. But if you focus on the abstract quality of wealth, there's nothing concrete to push back against. The idea gets in without resistance. 4 techniques. 10 minutes before bed. No scheduled overhaul, no complicated ritual. And this isn't theory. Let me show you how this actually played out in real people's lives. Murphy documented cases, and 2 of them stood out to me, not because they're extraordinary, but because the logic behind them is impossible to dismiss. The first is the story of a young man in Australia who wanted to become a doctor. No money, no connections, no realistic path forward. What he had was a simple nightly practice. Before bed, he'd visualize a diploma with his name on it hanging on a wall, with detail, with a real feeling of ownership. And what did he do for work? He cleaned medical offices. And every time he polished the diplomas of other doctors on the wall, he used that moment to lock in the feeling. It wasn't fantasy. It was deliberate state practice. The result, one of the doctors he worked for started noticing something different about him. Trained him, funded his studies in Montreal. He became a doctor. It wasn't luck. The subconscious in a state of compulsion doesn't create miracles. It changes what you notice, how you act, how you position yourself. And that changes what shows up in front of you. The second case is a teacher in California. She wanted a fur coat that cost $8,000. 3 months sustaining the feeling of already having it before bed. No forcing, no telling anyone, just the state. The path came from somewhere she never expected, a marriage proposal. And the gift? The same coat, same model, without him knowing what she'd been holding in her mind. Now, I know what you might be thinking. That's a coincidence, maybe. But Murphy documents dozens of cases with the same pattern. And the pattern isn't magic. It's that an aligned internal state starts filtering things differently. You notice what you used to overlook. You act where you used to hesitate. But there are people who apply all of this and still don't move. And it's almost always for the same reason. The most common reason is this. The person applies the technique in one moment and undoes it in another without even realizing it. Murphy calls it praying 2 ways. You affirm abundance in the morning, do your visualization before bed, but throughout the day you say I'm broke, complain about prices, say I can't afford that like it's nothing. The subconscious doesn't separate the moments, it adds them up, and the feeling that shows up most often is the one that wins. I went through this for longer than I'd like to admit. I was doing the visualization before bed seriously and spending the entire day complaining about bills, prices, how hard everything felt. It took me weeks to realize I was working two shifts, one building, one tearing down. When I figured it out, I didn't change the technique. I changed what I said during the day. The technique doesn't work in 10 minutes a day if the other 16 hours are reinforcing the opposite program. The second thing to watch out for is obsession. Murphy specifically warns about this. Chasing money to the exclusion of everything else creates an unbalanced life. And an unbalanced life, even when it produces financial results, brings frustration, isolation, and emptiness along with it. Real abundance in Murphy's framework includes peace, health, and relationships. The third is what he calls the inner thief. Unresolved guilt, ethical conflicts you're carrying but not addressing. Those internal patterns show up as external blocks. The internal always comes before the external. And the fourth is about time frame. Murphy's process doesn't work in 3 days. The subconscious accepts a new idea gradually as the dominant feeling starts to shift. Someone who applies this for a week, sees no visible result, and quits was exactly at the point where the old programming was beginning to give way. Faithfulness to the state is what determines the result, not intensity, not speed, consistency. Now that you know what to avoid, let me put together a simple plan you can start tonight. After all of that, the actual plan is simpler than it sounds. 5 steps, and the only one that asks for more than 10 minutes of your day is the fourth. First, identify your dominant belief. Before any technique, you need to know what's actually running underneath. Ask yourself a simple question. When you think about having real money, a lot of it, what's the first voice that shows up? That's not for me. Seems too good to be true. I've never been good with money. That voice is the program you're replacing. Second, choose a final image, not a dollar amount, not a goal, an image of possession, specific sensory, what you're seeing, what you're feeling. The more real the emotion behind that image, the deeper it goes. Third, apply it in the right state, 10 minutes before bed. No screens, no distractions, body relaxed. You drop into the lowest resistance state and repeat the idea with feeling. No tension, no trying to convince anyone. Fourth, watch your language during the day. What you say about money throughout the day is programming just as much as the nightly visualization. Stopping yourself from praying 2 ways isn't a detail, it's a requirement. And fifth, sustain it. The result isn't immediate, but it's inevitable when the state is maintained with consistency. The subconscious gives way gradually. Whoever quits too early was exactly at the point where the shift was about to begin. At the end of the day, that's it. It's not about working harder. It's not about naive, positive thinking. It's about changing the state you inhabit and holding that state with consistency. You spent this entire video understanding why it wasn't working before. Now you know what needs to change. The next step is yours. If you apply even half of what I showed you here, you're already going to be operating from a completely different place than where you were at the start of this video. Not because you got motivated, but because now you understand the mechanism. And understanding the mechanism changes everything. Now, if you want to go beyond what this video could deliver, there's a resource I recommend for anyone who made it this far. And this is a different angle from what I mentioned earlier, because it's not just about understanding the blocks. It's about working through these patterns systematically in a process that takes you from understanding all the way to a real shift in state. When I started applying this in a structured way, that was the first time the process stopped being theory. It's not a promise. It's what happens when you stop working with incomplete information. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments. Check it out, see if it resonates with you. Now I've got a specific question for you. Drop it in the comments. Which of the 3 layers we covered today hit closest to home? The missing feeling, the old programming, or the pattern of pushing money away without realizing it? I read every comment, and a lot of my next videos come directly from what people share down there. Subscribe to the channel, because 3 times a week I put out content on manifestation, mindset, and money, always with logic, always with depth. And if you know someone who's tried to change their life over and over and keeps ending up in the same place, send them this video. Sometimes a different explanation is all it takes for something to finally click. See you in the next one.